The document published today on the agreements concluded, it talks about a significantly accelerated reduction in the structural deficit. Is that faster than Tory plans as advertised in the election campaign?
No, my understanding is that it is at the same rate as we said in the election campaign, because what we were arguing was that we need to make a start now in cutting the deficit, because in the end this is about restoring confidence, the confidence in the markets that mean that we will hopefully be able to avoid what happened in Greece. And by doing that, we were arguing that we need to make a start now.
So in terms of the balance between spending reduction and taxation, for the Tories, it was 4-to-1 spending cuts rather than taxation. For the Liberal Democrats, it was 2-to-1. You know, where's the compromise? What's the agreement going to be?
Well, a more detailed version of this agreement is going to be published in the next few days.
Oh, when? Do you know?
Well, my understanding is that it'll be shortly. But what has been agreed is that the majority of the deficit reduction should come through cuts in spending rather than increases in taxation. That's what's been agreed between the two parties. And
we'll come on to your own department in a moment or two. But let's stick now still with the economy. National insurance. During the campaign, the Conservatives called that a tax on jobs. It's still a tax on jobs. It just means that the bosses don't have to pay, the workers do.
No, the reason that we were so against the jobs tax is because by increasing employers' national insurance share, it is a deterrent to employers from employing more people, because it increases the cost of employing additional workers, and so that's why we were very against that. Now, the employees' part of that, which we also campaigned against,
yes.
What we have done as a concession to the Liberal Democrats, they believe very strongly that the priority should be raising the tax threshold. So we have said that we will use that money to raise the tax threshold instead. For most people, the effect will be very marginal.
But it was something you campaigned on, and that's a concession to the Liberal Democrats. That's
correct, and we've had to make a number of concessions in areas where we wanted to do one thing, but this is a partnership between ourselves and the Liberal Democrats, and we want to make it work.
Well, let's look at other things that have been ditched. You've ditched the cut in inheritance tax. That was a flagship policy and one which Tory voters were very in favour of. You just ditched it.
We have, and you know, that was again one of those things that we recognised to make this agreement work, that we had to make concessions. But the Liberal Democrats also made concessions. They made concessions on their immigration policy. They made concessions on the euro. And what I would say to Tory voters who are perhaps concerned about that is that we ditched, if you like, one tax cut in favour of another tax cut.
Perhaps George Osborne wasn't really too unhappy to ditch that cut in inheritance tax, the reality is.
Well, no, we were very committed to it because we think it's very important to encourage people to save, but we recognise this is a partnership now, this is a coalition government.
There's something very interesting in this agreement as well about this whole, basically, it's a constitutional change, and it's quite, in a sense, it's quite shocking. The dissolution of Parliament used to be based on one vote, more than 50%, 51%. You've changed that to 55% in this agreement. Now, some people are saying that is a major and quite profound constitutional change, you know, delivered by a kind of sleight of hand. It could be 60%, it could be 70% next. What's to stop it?
Well, we will have that debate because all of these things have to be changed through...
But you agree that that's actually quite a shock?
Well, all these things have to be done through primary legislation. We will have that debate. But our priority in putting together this agreement has been to create stable and secure government, because the country faces a huge crisis. And that really was the impetus...
It was to protect this coalition's position, which actually might be quite anti-democratic.
Well, the coalition itself was set up because both David Cameron and Nick Clegg recognised that the priority for the country at the moment is to have stable government. And that's why, as part of that, to make it work, for example, we've agreed to fixed-term parliaments, something I think was the right thing to do anyway. But actually, if you're going to have a coalition, it's very important that both partners have confidence.
But this was never ever discussed. I mean, it actually looks as if the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives between them have hustled up what essentially is a constitutional change, the like of which we actually haven't seen before.
Well, actually, fixed-term parliaments is a
not
change.
Fixed-term parliaments. I'm talking about the 51% to 55%. It is actually a major change.
Well, I think it's a relatively small change, but I think it's something that's going to be very important in order to have stable government. If we're going to have an environment, I think this is the key point here, if we're going to have an environment in which two parties can operate effectively together, and I think that's what the overwhelming majority of people in this country want, then you need to raise the bar slightly to make that possible, and that's what this change is about.
And the other big change, it seems to me, looking at this on page 4, is essentially the creation of 200 new peers for the House of Lords. When we're talking about cutting MPs, suddenly we're going to have 200 new peers.
Well, this is effectively a temporary measure, because what we've said in there, if you look, is our commitment to a mainly or wholly elected House of Lords, and we're very keen to move towards that, and that's the really important change when it comes to the House of Lords.
Right, I'm going to ask you a culture question, but just let me ask you a quick question on Trident, because in here now there is a commitment to review Trident on a value for money basis. That is also a shift for the Conservatives, isn't it?
It's a commitment to look at value for money. Actually, we've said we would look at value for money across the board, but there is
I thought you ruled out Trident before.
We have absolutely committed to continue with Trident. That is a very important point.
OK. You will know, of course, that you're not in a protected ministry, and there has to be eventually £64 billion of cuts, £6 billion coming very quickly. How much of your budget are you prepared to give back?
Well, if those cuts were done evenly across all departments...
Which they won't be.
But if they were, then in my department that would mean about a £66 million cut. And I have had discussions with civil servants in my department today. One of the first things I did to ask how we can best find those savings without affecting the frontline services for which we're responsible. So it's something that all government departments have to take responsibility for.
So Olympic money entirely protected?
Olympic money is not protected. None of the Department of Culture, Media and Sports budgets are protected, and we're looking at all of them and we're saying, can we save this money without affecting our core services?
Jamie Hunt, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Well, President Obama had warm words for David Cameron today and said that when the two had spoken, the Prime Minister had reaffirmed Britain's commitment to America's strategy in Afghanistan. So the Lib Dem